Allison also functions as not only treasurer, but also as secretary. So I understand you have some motions to revise the PHRF-LO bylaws.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to move that bylaw 7.1.4 be modified to, excuse the grandfather clock.
Is that your shift change clock? Is that your
Yes,
shift
it is.
bell?
I move that bylaw 7.1.4 be modified to add the reference to bylaw 7.2 provisional membership. And this is just a tidy up matter.
Mm-hmm.
Can I have a seconder?
I'm happy to second that.
Okay. So Owen, if you can populate that.
Yep. Sorry, it's just doing a Q&A. So we've
Right.
got the
Any
poll running up.
discussions? We have a mover and a seconder. Any discussion on this item? If not, feel free to vote.
Yeah, this one is also, we've got 2/3 of participants, 92% in favor, and again, 3 abstentions and nobody opposed. I'll give it a few more seconds. We did have a quick question that the rush fee will have HST added to it. Is
Yes.
that correct?
Yes. Correct. Always, all of our fees.
In Canada, right?
Yes.
Okay, we have over 70% of people. I'll end this poll now. Nobody is opposed to this, as you can see. So I think this is great. We can move on to the next one.
Yes.
Allison, still with you?
Yes. And finally, I'd like to move that this bylaw 7.3.3 regarding member representation be added to clarify the issue. And this is specific to, by default, the vote goes to the main handicapper. We've had unfortunate results from asking for a response from the clubs. There's a sad lack of interest, it would appear. And so we're proposing that this bylaw 7.3.3 be added to clarify. Can I get a seconder to that motion?
I do.
Brian?
Thanks, Brian.
Any questions? Seeing none, Owen, if you can populate the question.
Poll is online right now. Okay, we're 45 seconds in, 90% of people have approved. Yep. And
that's in accordance with our bylaw requirement. And I thank you very much.
So there we are.
Okay.
And that's that.
That is carried as well. Fabulous.
So PHRF-LO is in a continuous improvement loop, and we attempt to remain accurate and current and recognizing variations as the world changes in the sailing world. So within that, we have folks that look at it in greater detail, which includes Owen Snyder as part of the technical advisory committee. So I call upon Owen to give to have his presentation here.
And of course, this presentation is with Adam Farkas and myself. And I think we should recognize the active members of the Technical Advisory Committee. So Central Council, when it meets, ends up trying to sort out as much as it can, but at every meeting we invite people that are professionals and technical experts into our world to ask them blunt questions and get professional inputs on what we're looking at and what we're deciding on. So Gary Cook is one, alphabetically our members, naval architect. We have Steve Corona. We have John Crawley, who everyone remembers is the former district chief from Toronto West, and Kevin Piper, sailmaker. We have other people that we do call upon, but these four individuals, they really have stepped up and help us out every chance we get. And you'll see some of their work in the presentation that Adam and I have put together. So without further ado, I'm going to go over the 2022 approved rule changes. So we have a spinnaker girth measurement that changes from max to mid for all spinnaker types. Previously, we were only looking at asymmetricals. Now we are changing that for symmetrical sails. And this is to ensure consistency with the equipment rules of sailing and with various classes. The next item is the minimum symmetrical spinnaker mid-girth being equal to or greater than 75% of the, 75% of the foot. Last year at the AGM, we decreased the fixed sprit credit from 6 to 3 seconds per mile. A little later on, we'd like to rescind this item and replace it with something else. And then we have some changes in the Handicapper's Manual, parts 1 and 2. So I will ask Bill Visser or Adam to speak on that. We have a few housekeeping items this year that we're going to put to the vote and talk about. What we've labeled as housekeeping items is to be consistent again with the racing rules, a blooper streaker ban. We've had a number of individuals. I have Al Malloy asking a quick question. So will all existing spinnakers have to be remeasured? Al, we did go through and take a look at which ones I think were going to be an issue. But at the end of the day, yes, we should remeasure everything so that we have the accurate mid-girth. Obviously, that wouldn't apply to asymmetricals because that is what we are submitting. I hope that takes care of your question, Al. Please feel free to type some more in.
I would like to add.
Yes, yes, Adam, please, anytime.
Just a little bit. We realize that certain classes may be impacted in a way that the class rules permit a wider mid-girth than a wider max girth than mid-girth. The intention is to retain the ASP values of these classes, and that may involve some minor adjustment in the SP value for the class.
And I would also add that for the normal owner, the spinnaker does not have to be remeasured, but there may be an advantage to having it remeasured.
Yeah, so that is absolutely correct, because if you've got the max in your certificate, it is like other measurements we've encouraged but not penalized in this case. A mid should typically be either equal to or less than a max. So that might result in a credit. No formulas are changing or anything. And as Adam said, we will try and play around with the SP to make sure that ASP ratings, so what you're sailing against, do not change because of it. But
some class examples are the J24s,
yeah,
and a Laser 28s.
So if there are no further questions, the next item B, retractable motor with flush plate, retracted when racing. In our minds, this is the equivalent of having an outboard with nothing there, because many flush plate owner makes sure the back end of their boat is clean. So we'd like to just pop that in and ensure that there is no penalty for that. And the next item, which has been in our rules partially, we want to record the largest and smallest spinnakers. We've had a lot of people keenly interested in what are referred to as code 0 sales, but they're really spinnakers because they're over a 75% mid-girth. We'd like to start grabbing data on your largest and smallest. We normally would grab the data on a SIM and an ASIM, but when we see the measurements, you can figure that out. So if there are no questions on that, we'll go to rule revisions, and we'll have some voting in there. Alison, would you like to run the polls? Yeah, we'll run them after and at each point that we discuss this.
Owen, if I could just jump in, Owen, if I could just.
Yeah, please, Larry.
We recognize that this may create a new book of work for the local handicappers. Our intent isn't to burden you with difficult pieces of work to do, but it also is intended to reduce or to limit some of you being at the pointy end of a stick of people's questioning of legality of sales or functionality of stuff. So it's in, we have your best interest in mind of bringing these forward. And certainly the spinnaker question, nobody wants to protest a competitor, and it creates a very uncomfortable scenario. We feel that this gives us a good set of data to understand. Measuring all spinnakers is a relatively easy exercise compared to the work that you undertook in measuring all mains. When people figured out that measuring all mains, actually the number of folks got credit, it was a rewarding experience for the certificate holders. That may be true in the case of spinnakers, but it also then solves some of the whisper campaign that is very unfortunate for all members, and certainly puts the handicappers in a difficult position. So that was the intent of this.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing to be crystal clear about, we require right now every asymmetrical spinnaker to be measured to ensure compliance. So technically speaking, this isn't a new requirement. We just want to codify it properly. Okay, and so, yes, and sorry, Bill sent me a chat message. And yes, I will like you to talk about the revisions to the manual. But in the meantime, we do have a vote set up, and we'd like to get the housekeeping items voted on quickly. So there will be one vote, and I'll get them going.
And I assume that you're going to move this. We'll take whoever would like the second. They could second for all three, even though it's 3 votes.
Yeah, so we will have 3 votes in a row on the housekeeping items. That'll be vote 8, 9, and 10. So I would like to find someone.
I'll second it.
Excellent. So we have a seconding from Bill Visser. So if everyone's okay, I will proceed and launch through the votes. So the poll is up right now. Okay, and I've given that 30 seconds, 90, and I'll just end the poll and you can see the results. So I think everyone's in agreement with banning or removing bloopers and streakers. That's pretty resounding. So let's go to vote number 9 with respect to the flush plate being treated as an outboard. And to emphasize again, when we go through the rules annually, we look at things, we look at changes in the racing rules, equipment rules, and because we refer to them as part of our rule, we need to ensure consistency. And every once in a while, we catch something someone's missed over the years, be it a measurement on a boat, be it whatever, it's just housekeeping. Again, on this poll, nobody opposed. Nobody is opposed, just a couple of abstentions. So I believe this should carry through. And now the last one. Oops. Actually, it is not a poll. So I think we are done because the measurement of all spinnakers was in the rule already. And I think we're just going to make sure it's crystal clear. So I now believe, and Gary did point out that the rule 55.1 does not mention bloopers. It mentions number of sails up in the front end of the boat. And we only look at 2, a spinnaker and a head sail. So if you'd like to add a third, a non-flying head sail, to be very clear, that's what we're trying to get rid of, because we've had a lot of people try to be extremely cute on where they'd like to place a free-flying head sail. Alrighty, on to the next page. So we asked a question last year about having different credits related to the tack point on the boat. When we originally started, we used a 6-second credit. And last spring, Adam and I were looking around and what we could do about this, because it became very obvious. And I mean, in being a handicapper, you should get out and try and race with many people and try and do what we can to understand what's going on. And a lot of people with what I would call larger, well, I had one incident at a club where someone said, you know, the 6 seconds just doesn't cut it. So Adam, if you wouldn't mind taking it for a second, saying a bit about what you found over on Lake Michigan, and I'll talk about what's happening.
Lake Michigan had for a while a graded system for providing extra credits for heavier boats with asymmetrical spinnakers. These boats cannot really sail very well downwind. They have to sail high angles, and so their VMG is very poor. And the lighter boats, on the other hand, can get up to close to or plane, and with the right crew handling, they can actually sail quite low because the lighter displacement will permit them to plane or close to get plane and make use of riding waves, etc. The heavier boats have no chance. They just sit in a hole that they created for themselves. And Lake Michigan recognized this and actually put in a numerical value of estimate, and they've had reasonable success, and the membership was pleased to have this kind of special break for them. And especially more recent years, many of the boats chose to convert from symmetrical to asymmetric spinnakers with a fixed sprit for sail handling, short-handed, etc. And this is, I look at it also as an incentive to keep the boats out racing. And it's all in the name of trying to be as fair as possible, give the best chance to people out there to get some placements in races. And that's really our main motivation. And we don't want to develop a rule that is too complicated, VPP type thing. This is a simple rule of thumb based on experience. And we're very much in favor of helping the ordinary club sailors to be out there and feel good about it.
So
that's about all I can say for now.
And the implementation, Adam, as well, how it'll apply to your certificate?
Well, it will involve some modifications in the calculations, just so that we pick up the right parameters when the certificate is generated. And I think we will have some discussion within the Central Council as well as the programmer, who is looking after the database to generate the certificate. So we are looking for an approval in principle, but the actual mechanics of implementation may take a while for just for the reason of either cost or complexity in the database.
Yeah. And on the, I'm just going to answer John Scher's quick question about flush plates. We have a list of classes we're aware of. If you do not think we'll be aware of it, please send it in to us and let us know which class you think may be affected. That'll help us out, make sure we don't miss anything. So that should cover that. Yeah, that's something I think we need to talk about. PHRF-Link Ontario has a revenue stream from certificates. It has expenditures that I would deem as fixed and non-variable. So all of the projects we have, it took, what, 3 years, if someone can correct me, to get the online certificates in place. We have a database. We have coding that rests on top of this database, and getting that particular software and then program to interface with a web bit is quite complex, because the underlying database, if you look it up anywhere, Access was not designed to do that. So these projects, while they will be approved, we'll have to find money to pay for many of them. So we will approve all of them. The implementation may not be in the next year. It will depend on our ability to get programming done and funding for the programming. So
I'd like to add just a little bit of technical aspect to this. When you look in the right-hand column, you can see that the largest group will really not be impacted at all by this change, because the credit stays at 6 seconds, and so to me, the next group, which is on the light to moderate displacement, is also a large number. Just to be fair for the rest of us, rest of the fleet, it very much reflects what the fleet needs.
I'll just add that if we approve it at this meeting, it doesn't come into effect until 2023.
It does. So we'll say it will be on the rule book, but the actual implementation of it may or will likely be delayed based on requiring funding. And Scott Lyons does have a question. The breakpoints were determined using the displacement to length ratio, which you can Google how to calculate that one up. And we use the same ones as Lake Michigan, because Lake Michigan has similar conditions and similar boats to ours. They actually have a lot of faster boats out there than we do on a percentage basis. The only modification we made to what Lake Michigan has done is the over 350 category. We have 2 boats there, and we do have a list of the impacts available by boat class based on issued certificates last year. And the 2 boats that would get a plus 12, I think everyone would agree with us that that is not a big deal. So to answer your question, Scott, that is a straight copy from our friends at Lake Michigan, who frequently ask us questions. And I guess we should also mention that Lake Michigan is banded up with Detroit, and they're now the Western Great Lakes or Mid-Great Lakes PHRF. So I hope that answers your question, Scott.
And
yes, sir.
Adam, excellent report. Just to highlight, already of the 72 and 83 votes, we're already in that range. So what we've done is it's the shift between going down 3 to the 0 or going up 3 to the 9 or up 6 to the 12. So the impact is really on 39, 40, 41 votes largely are going to see any significance. But it isn't a 12-second credit. It's a smaller credit than that, because it was already getting a centerline credit.
Thank you. That's correct. So yeah, I was going to put in a chart on which one shifted like we did. I have Steve Corona asking if we could allow 1 second adjustments. And I think we could maybe discuss that at the next meeting. But we find that going, it then becomes a question of how do you want to graduate that and so on, and the implementation. We want to typically keep these adjustments a little more simple because it's going to be people making mods on their boat. But Steve, if you'd like to have a further discussion on that, I think we should maybe have have you sit in on the next Central Council meeting. And if we do want to change that, we'll probably have a year or so, the next AGM, if it really becomes a burning issue.
I'd like to add just one little detail to this, that PHRF is not really meant to be optimized for like a VPP. PHRF is supposed to be simple, put boats in certain groups and categories, and it's discouraged that people start to tweak 1 or 2 seconds. It would imply an arms race, extra money spent for really very limited benefit. I bet anyone 3 seconds a mile difference on a race course is almost nothing.
Yeah, someone did ask about, yeah, the typical answer is 6 seconds is one bad tack in the race. And we also had a question on a specific boat type that carries both an asymmetrical and symmetrical. We always base the penalty for the boat on the biggest impact. So the symmetrical sail in this particular class will predominate over their asymmetrical configuration. Thus, we expect and will see no impact. Okay, can we go to voting?
Oh, we have
Yes, sorry, I have to go to my poll screen now. So vote number 10 will be, may we rescind the centerline fixed credit approved at last year's AGM?
Before we vote on it, we'll have you as a seconder, Adam, if you want, or you as a mover.
Yes,
and as a seconder,
I
so
will.
we have in the minutes.
Either. I can propose it.
Yeah, okay. So Adam moves and Owen seconds. So now we can go to voting.
Okay, so vote number 10 is up. Sorry. Sorry, my poll disappeared while I was trying to do some Q&A as well. Okay, we're 30 seconds into it. We have one out of 72 participants right now. One opposed, a couple of abstains, and majority, of course, in favor. So I will end the poll at 1 minute up, and then I'll share the results, and then we'll move to this actual graduated credit system. Okay. So the results should be on the screen. This has passed with 77% of those voting in favor. We have 8 abstentions and 1 opposed. Oh, thanks, Larry, for covering that answer. Vote number 10. Or 11, sorry. Oh.
Just before the vote poll is posted, what we are doing is we're keeping the current rule unchanged unless and until we are able to implement this graduated or graded credit.
Yeah, and I think that will be an overwhelming theme on all of this, and we'll discuss that in a moment. Okay, sorry. And Larry, I think, is taking care of Ed's question in the background. So unfortunately, our votes were out of order. So I will put up the poll right now, vote number 13, on adopting this new credit system, and I will give it a minute. So should be on the screen, ready to go.
While those votes are happening, folks, if you have questions on any of these matters, please engage with your district rep and make sure that if you have concerns that they make their way to Central Council. We want to ensure that we are as open and transparent. We don't like the innuendos that these are backroom deals being done in smoke-filled rooms with us having bourbons. And that's not the case. And so please have these conversations with your local handicapper and with your district handicapper to ensure that your interests and your concerns are brought forward and are effectively addressed. We're all in this together.
Okay, and just going to say, Allison is trying to run the polls in order of things going on here, and I'll dance around to the other topics in a minute. So this is vote number 13, 70% in favor, and 3 people against and 9 abstentions. So this is carried and will be implemented when we have a chance to implement it. So now I guess I can go back to poll 11. I'll go on to our next topic. Oh, no. Go on to our next slide. And I apologize, I've got 3 screens open right now, and I'm trying to do the Q&A as well. The next topic was minimum power. And sorry about the vote reference. It will be another question referenced. There are a number of cases where we looked through the manual a little while back, and we realized that we were using a very low number of hull speed, which theoretically could permit someone to go use something as small as a trolling motor to move their boat. And this would really apply to an outboard and to people who have been a little potentially what I would say cute, which is they fit a very, very thin 2-blade fixed prop on, grab a 12-second credit, and they clearly have a very, very small exposed surface, which would give them a significant advantage in racing. So we did bring this question up with our technical committee. Gary Cook, who is a naval architect, said, you know, as an initial measure, and he's doing a lot of work for us in the background to look at the impact of everything, because Lake Ontario does have the most generous credits in North America for propellers. And his recommendation was a very succinct and simple change. And if you look at the example, a 25-foot waterline boat, you take the square root of that 25 feet. The metric numbers are obviously different. And you multiply it by 1.34, which is a constant, you get that boat should be able to hit 6.7 knots. Currently, we say it should hit half that, 3.4, or 51% of hull speed. And we'd like to simply change that to, instead of 2/3, 90%, which would give us 2/3 of hull speed. So that would make the boat have to go 1.1 knots faster. Something to bear in mind is that when you read the offshore regulations, they require you to go at a much faster speed to a safe port than this. And all we're trying to do is balance out, you know, the size of diesels in boats and, you know, make sure that the boat is trying to be a little more fair and reasonable. So if there are any questions on this, please do ask. But I will, Brian?
Yeah,
Sorry?
I was just going to say we should be clear that these speeds are in flat water.
Yes.
Okay, there's no wind, no waves, flat water. This is what we're requiring here.
Yeah.
And that's consistent the way it's been in.
That's the way it's been, yes.
In perpetuity.
Yeah, we're just making them a bit faster so that, someone who's being really cute by throwing a trolling motor on a big boat, that you have something to this. And Steve Corona, of course, is asking, does a handicapper have to go for a boat ride? This would actually be something where you would probably want to sit back and protest someone who you think has a really small prop, and then, the protest committee would implement that. In all of my years of sailing, I have not seen anyone complain or do anything about this. So this, I think, would fit into the same bucket of we have a rule, and it is like every other rule. We are not out on the water enforcing it. We are not out on the water doing protests. We are simply providing a set of rules that race committees can utilize. And we believe that this will improve equity. And it is a zero cost proposition for anyone who's in compliance. And we would anticipate that 99.5% or more of the fleet would be in compliance. So I'm going to run the poll on this. And I apologize. I normally like typing out these answers for everyone, but I'm answering these live. Okay, and we've got most people voted. I'll give it another. Yeah, and while we are not here to enforce safety regulations, that is an item, it's a Q&A question. That is an item that race committees may or may not also enforce. It's typically up to the owner to be in compliance with the law, but on distance races that are category 3 and 4, if I'm remembering the order of categories correctly, they have safety committees and they will go out and police these if required. So Mr. Fisher, absolutely correct. This is more of a handicapping issue for us. So we've been a minute on the poll. Everyone's wildly in favor of this one as well. And this is something that will be a quick modification in the manual. So there's no issue with that. I'll go to the next slide. Our point-to-point rule. And the thing I think people have to remember, I had someone at one of the clubs I was with ask a lot of questions of why, we want to go to, I do have another question on horsepower data and outboards and so on. Yes, there is a report that Gary has put together that's in there, and that will become part of what we discuss when we get to revisiting propeller credits in the future. Our system of handicapping is based on windward, leeward races. A lot of people will go, but my handicap changed this year from the non-flying sales project. It really messed me up on a distance race. And the answer at the end of the day is our handicap that we have right now is for weekend or evening races, course races under typically 5, 6, 10 miles in 8 knots of wind and so on. And what we are trying to do is use a velocity prediction program. We had received information from our friend Jim Teeters at US Sailing, where I believe he's back to right now. And we had thought that we could just use the offset and apply it everywhere. We then applied a waterline component to it. And we've batted the results around Central Council a couple of times. And what we see is that the speed decreases, whereas any VPP you can look at will tell you that when you're sailing off wind, the boat goes faster. And we had a number of pretty brutal anomalies for sport boats. So what we would like to do is take a little more time to deal with this. And this is more of an informational bit. And the other piece is we do not have the resources or funds to pay for adding additional fields to our online certificate and our access program. So when we have the money for the program and everything, we will implement it. So expect about a year's delay in this. And it will also include our new flying head sail rule in the ASP calculation for point to point, which I will discuss on the next slide. So Adam, can you run through this? Hello, Adam. Well,
I just unmuted myself.
yes, I know. Thank you.
Well, the free flying head sail is really, it was invented for point-to-point racing. It has certain advantages in a way that it provides extra horsepower without really loading up the boat and heeling it. Lately, a lot of aerodynamics and hydrodynamics research was done, and the programs that figure out these sails really became a fantastic tool to provide the extra horsepower to the boats that they can actually handle. The big thing is that these sails are nice, but if you overload it, you can't sail with it. So it's a matter of shape and size to work at best for the particular boat. And these sails are typically have a smaller than 75% of the foot girth measurement. And so what we are saying is that these sails are practically not much used for windward leeward racing, but for reaches is the best sail you can have. And to keep the game fair, we are trying to keep a simplified approach to the extra driving force. And we say, all right, if you have a small jib, a non-overlapping jib, and you put on a big sail like this, then the extra sail area that you have in that free-flying head sail should really be penalized. And we are using our Genoa assessment formula for the extra area that we're adding in to keep the technical parts consistent. And so based on this, and we're looking at other handicapping systems, we are pretty reasonable with our approach, and also talking to sailmakers. We said, okay, we have to determine what kind of free-flying head sail inventory is on a boat. So we said, let's get the largest and the smallest measured, because the smaller ones will likely or could be falling into the free-flying head sail range. And then it comes under a different handicap regime or handicap assessment, more similar to a Genoa, because that is how it is used. And so we are staying with the definitions that are found in the IMS or ERS for a free-flying head sail. And that's the range between 55 and 75% of the foot. No battens will be allowed in this sale because we want to keep it as a soft sale. And we will have 1 seconds per mile penalty for each 5% area increase over and above the largest non-flying head sail. So if a boat has 150% Genoa or 155% Genoa, but then they want to fly a free-flying head sail, their penalty is going to be only minus 1 second because they're about the same area as their Genoa. But if somebody has a non-overlapping head sail, then the area increase will be quite substantial, and we want to make sure that it is rated fairly against the fleet. So talking to sailmakers, we feel that this particular penalty system is fair and reasonable, and it will keep the racing fair for everyone.
So I need to apologize. I didn't realize you were seeing my management screen as opposed to the slideshow. And I believe that our AGM will be available on YouTube, and the slides we will post on our website, Allison.
I will need to confirm that.
Yeah, we'll try and get that for you, Mr. Dougal. That covers that, Adam?
Yep.